Okay, there's this one. Wilma has an endgame problem, oh boy. Okay, so quick update. Actually, you see, when I went back and looked at my VOD, I ended up finding out that the dude actually just deleted his video. So, yeah, he was quite the coward there. Guess the Koo Dogs or the Kurobots or whatever the fuck you want to call those dumbasses got to him. But hey, they can't take anything that isn't sucking the dick of Solon or Kuro or whatever. Oh well, it is what it is.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high.
Okay. Endgame problem, sure.
Endgame content in gacha games is something that needs to be done right, as it is the
I mean, I just look at all endgame content in these as a scam.
primary source of content for any gacha game's core gameplay loop once the player has exhausted the game of its offerings during the launch version or during any given patch of the game. With this in mind, Wuthering Waves has been struggling in this regard to offer satisfying endgame content since the initial release of the game and to this very day. I want to go over why Wuba's endgame is bad and how it is a massive turnoff to players. Before I can get started, however, I need to outline the problems with the game's combat system first to set the scene. After all, endgame content in any of these games is entirely focused on combat, the very foundation of the gameplay. If the game's combat system isn't good, then you cannot obfuscate the shortcomings of said combat with a bunch of endgame modes. So, let's get to it. To start off with, we need to talk about the most damning thing that drags Wuba's combat down the most, the concerto.
A lot easier than that thing. I think either way, they're just dog shit. I can't wait to go redo the same thing again, but with even bigger HP sponges in a stupid circle with a timer. For dog shit's amounts of premium currency as the quote-unquote reward. And don't forget all the other effort and everything involved in order to even get to that point. So you can even do it in the first place. Gee, doesn't that sound wonderful, guys? Right, gee. Sounds great, doesn't it?
System. If you've already watched my video covering the misinformation being spread during Yuzuha's release in ZZZ, then you should already be familiar with this information, but I will reiterate for those who did not see it. Every unit in...
Yeah. I thought there was some, though. I'm pretty sure there is some HP inflation. You're just not paying attention to it. Or at least it's not noticeable enough for you guys to start going crazy. But I'm pretty sure there is. I've skimmed through a couple of those dungeon solo videos from that weird guy doing it. And I've seen pieces of like what he's done in order to barely make do and clear it over time. And the most recent one is insane. The dude is basically using a freaking $1,500 dungeon to clear it at this point. So like I would say maybe there is, especially because he didn't need that back in the beginning. If he wanted to do his dungeon solo, now he needs like a $1,500 dungeon. So like, you know, there definitely is. But I think it gets masked if you're using more of the more recent ones, because the way they've designed the content, same with Genshin's Abyss, they're basically going to try to favor the element or whatever is, or parts of it that are related to whatever they're trying to sell. They do this all the time. You know, 5-star max dupe weapon? Max Constellation or whatever it's called? Yes. R5 limited weapon. The dude was using an R5 limited weapon. I don't know which one it was, but it wasn't one of the standard ones. They were like using that shit now because he can't do it anymore. They have to use a different one, and they gotta use a... They're not free. I wouldn't call them free. You get them while pulling other stuff. But those pulls are not technically free. they have a cost. But then he's like using like almost completely min-maxed gear as well. So that's its own other mess too. On like, what cost would you put on the freaking time, investment, stamina, whatever, to go farm the echoes and everything too? I don't. I don't have her at S6. It don't matter. You still needed to do the pulls at some point. And you still have to factor in the cost of those pulls. It's not as if those pulls were free. But yeah, then you can go into a whole debate about the time factor, the time cost, and the time investment, and the value of that. It's about $200 per guarantee weapon. Okay. It's roughly $200 per guarantee weapon, and you need 5 to get it maxed. Okay, what's 200 times 5? That's 200 times 5. That's 1,000. Okay, $1,000. Sure, $1,000. And then I was like factoring in some pulls for the weapon, for the constellations or whatever. But like, yeah. Fine, we'll go down to $1,000 if that makes you happy. We're not gonna even count the time cost. The amount of time he wasted on the whole thing. We'll ignore the factor of time. But sure. I can meet you there. It's still kind of absurd when you think about it.
Wuthering Waves has a circular meter to the left of their health bar referred to as the Concerto Energy Meter that fills up in combat based on the action performed. When full, swapping to a different character will have the exiting character perform an outro skill and the entering character perform an intro skill. Because of just how strong outro skills are in terms of their buffs on offer, Wuwa's combat demands you to play your teams and rotations around generating Concerto energy and receiving the incredibly strong team buffs from outro skills. Combined with needing to generate resonance energy to cast a unit's liberation, team rotations in Wuthering Waves.
But hey, now that he needs a $1,000 dungeon, now will he think, oh wait, no, there is power creep. Because he didn't need that in the past. It doesn't matter that you can use the character in there to clear it, but rather the cost factor. And the resources put in. Because if you have to put drastically more into them just to make it doable, when you didn't need any of that stuff in the beginning, that's definitely a sign of creep. Of HP inflation or whatever they're doing. And the thing is too, there are other ways to have HP inflation without inflating the HP number. Like, here's the thing, right? If, let's say you have a boss. Let's say the boss has a 1,000 HP, right? Now, let's say I increase this HP by 10%, so now it's 1,100 HP. Or, let's say I made it so the boss takes 10% less damage. Right? Let's say I make it take 10% less damage. What's the difference between a boss that takes 10% less damage and has 1,000% HP, or a boss that takes the regular amount of damage and has 1,100 HP? They're both the same thing, but done in different ways. Either way, you're getting the creep of 10%. And you can play around and fudge around those numbers as you see fit. I'm just saying this as an example. For all you know, 1,000 HP in a different game could be the same as 1 million HP in some other game. It's like, at the end of the day, you just gotta like, just look at it as like a relative value compared to something else. But like the point is, what I'm trying to say is, what's the difference between 1,100 HP and 1,000 HP with a 10% damage reduction taken modifier? You both have to do 110% of whatever damage you were doing in the same amount of time to kill it. at the correct amount of time. It doesn't change that. All you did was move one of the numbers around to make it harder in terms of dealing with more stats without actually changing that. But yeah. Again, like, it doesn't matter what percent I use. The impact is there either way. I just use 10% because it's a nice and small number to think about. But like, yeah, sure, I could also say, like, what if I made it from 1000 HP to 2000 HP? Right? But it takes the same amount of damage constantly. Or I make it still have 1000 HP, but all the damage you do is cut in half. Well, 1000 divided by 1/2 is still 2000. So it's the same number. It's the same thing, just done in different ways. And a lot of these games will do a combination of that. And part of why, like, it's really noticeable in these days with Genshin with its creep, in its, like, in endgame modes, is because they do exactly just that. They don't always just increase the base number, but they'll just reduce damage taken or some other modifier elsewhere to give the same result. It's the same problem, just with a different result, and it's not always as simple there. Because yeah, it's very noticeable when you just make HP number bigger. But if you make some other number that you can't see bigger, you can still do the same thing but with less. Right? Like, you can still get away with that. But hey, at least they're not doing stuff where, like, they're like, okay, well, but, like, a 99% damage reduction modifier. So that you're only doing 1% of whatever damage you're doing. I've seen that being done in one of these games before. I think a lot of you have seen it being, stuff like that been done somewhere before. I just wonder where. Although at least in that one, though, when it's done, it was done so because you're supposed to do damage in a different way, and they didn't want you just whacking the boss. But yeah, like, that's just the thing, man. I think the problem with it is, like, it's one thing when, like, everything gets increased by a certain amount, but a different thing when it's, like, only the enemies got increased, and the newest unit that they released has higher numbers than the previous one. Not yet, but eventually it'll get there. Keep in mind how much worse it gets. So, like, here's the thing, right? Let's say right now tower adversity or whatever is 160% the damage threshold you need over 1.0. Let's say every patch, every update, they're gonna increase it by, let's say, 5%. So the next patch, it'll be 168% over the original. And then the patch after that will be 176.4. And then it'll just keep going. Right? This another patch later, 185. Another patch later, it's gonna be 194. And then finally, it's more than double. I think once it reaches the more than double threshold, that's when it will be really noticeable. But, like, this is assuming, let's say, 5% creep, for example. Once it hits, like, 160%, creep 4 or 5 more times, it's going to be more than double the base. It's going to be small, and it's going to slowly increase over time. Because, like, again, like, if you're gonna be targeting a specific set of creep, if someone does, let's say, 1,000,000 damage, right? You creep that by 5%, right? They're gonna have to do 1,050,000. But then if you want to creep that by 5%, they're gonna need to do 1.1 million and then plus another 2,500. And then again, you creep that, and like you're going to get this exponential growth curve that gets more and more crazy over time for just a 5% increase of power creep. Let's just say 5%. Right? But yeah, you may not have noticed it yet, but it's definitely there. It is definitely there. But yeah. And like, I know one of the things that they do is as well, I know with Genshin, they would choose certain types of enemies that would like take extra damage from one thing, but less from another. Or they would do things like that to kind of mask it too. So that like, if you use those types of units for it, you might not notice it, but if you use the same ones every single time, it'll be very obvious. Right? It's more obvious if you use the same set of units every single time on every single reset, and then look at it there. But also, you have to make sure you're doing fair, equal comparisons. Like, if you got an equipment upgrade let's say you have, I don't know, let's say your stats is like 100% of your stats now, but let's say for the next reset, you got an upgrade on one of your pieces, and now you would have 110% of your stats. If you wanted to do a fair test, you have to compare it with your old gear that you used on the previous one with the next reset. Because if you're improving your gear as well, none of your data will be equal or fair. You're not testing the same thing. You're not measuring the same benchmark. You're not measuring the same sets of data or whatever. Right? You're measuring two different things. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, any increase, for example, is still an increase. And if you want to do a fair comparison, you should be comparing to what you had before. If not, retest everything else with the same set of stats and put them all in the same playing field. And that is kind of the problem there, because people aren't doing that. So they make assumptions on data they have nothing on, because they aren't testing things properly. They're not evaluating everything fairly. And if you never update and just pull the new character, you pull the new character and using the new character. I don't think they're incompetent. They're doing it on purpose. They're doing it on purpose because they're trying to force more of the same shit there, and they don't want you reusing stuff you already have. They're obviously doing it on purpose. It's not that they're incompetent, they're doing it on purpose. Especially when it's one way they can get you time synced in there to get you there as logging in regularly and as much as possible. Like, it is a retention system. They're doing it on purpose. Right? Because, like, how do you keep them playing for even longer then? You make them have to start over again. Constantly. And they'll have to redo everything every single time. They do it on purpose. I mean, it is what it is, man. And then moving from your unborn boxes, yeah. Sure. But there are other ways they could make money without having to do that. What do you mean friendlier than the old ones? What do you mean friendlier? They still have, like, really absurd RNG, man. They still have, like, a possible range of 8 values for every substat. They still have, like, 14 or 15 possible substats per echo piece. They still have, like, you still have to RNG as well for the actual echo to drop on the main stat you want as well. I mean, sure, you can technically choose the main stat, but you still have to deal with the substat. And keep in mind, the substat problem per echo in WUA is a worse problem than trying to guess, 6 lottery numbers between 1 and 49 and win yourself a couple $1 million from a lottery jackpot. You'll have an easier time winning the lottery and guessing the correct numbers than getting the exact perfect piece that you want on any echo. Even if you completely deleted main stats entirely, you would still have a harder time because of just how absurd the RNG is when you have to factor in. You have like 15 substats and then 8 possible substats per piece. And the amount of possible ranges you can have for each of those, and on top of it, with them being weighted in terms of percentage, and at best, maybe 2% for the highest values.
Are needlessly bloated and take way too long to go through to get to the fun part of the game where you can whack enemies with your DPS for a lot of damage. The ankle weight that is Concerto Energy is so bad that weapons and character duplicates like the Variation and Stellar Symphony Recidifiers, as well as Sequence Node 2 for...
Yeah? You know how much better it would be? It would be 300 million times better. I'm not even joking. It would be roughly 300 million times better. Keep in mind, that is multiple times worse probability than winning that lottery that I mentioned earlier. Guessing 6 unique numbers between 1 and 49? The probability of that is roughly just under 1 in 15 million. Which is significantly better than 1 in 300 million odds. Just so you know. And it's done on purpose. Shit's dog shit, man.
For Verena are worth their weight in gold in the WoWa community, and is frequently recommended for players to look out for when on rated up event banners. Even everyone's favorite 4-star unit, Sanhua, is only really valued within the meta primarily for her high Concerto generation, making her one of, if not the fastest, rotation characters in the game. Concerto Energy is a system that greatly restricts the freedom of how you play your teams, and artificially inflates rotation times instead of having a genuinely interesting playstyle for support and sub-DPS characters that warrant the higher field times. Continuing on the topic of bloated rotation times, WoWa's Resonance Liberation animations are just too slow. To help illustrate my point, I've got 2 videos from DYS Pro that compares ultimate times between the entire 5-star roster of Genshin Impact up to version 5.8 and every single character in Wuthering Waves up to version 2.3. I will not be using Honkai Star Rail for comparisons as it is a turn-based game, and I will also be excluding Zenless Zone Zero as ZZZ's combat system is not based on rotations and casting ultimates in the same way Genshin and WoWa is. Here's a quick disclaimer, but even with a possible margin of error, things should be pretty obvious. For your convenience, I've transferred all animation times from the animation starting to when the player gets control of their character back to a notepad document. When looking at the rankings, it paints a very obvious picture with the entire 5-star roster of Genshin Impact having ultimate animations that are shorter than more than half of Wuthering Waves' entire 2.3 roster. Even if you're using a character with a short animation time like Zani or Sanhua, it gets immediately cancelled out by their best-in-slot teammates of Phoebe and Camellia, respectively, having some of the longest animation times of the entire roster. Maybe it's best the video was from version 2.3. I could easily see Kartithia's animations being a combined total of 8 seconds. The last thing I want to point out about WoWa's combat system is its inconsistent parry system. Because of the inherent advantages and disadvantages between different units in terms of attack speed and frequency, there is a steep learning curve to WoWa's parrying that effectively keeps a majority of casual players out of being able to effectively use the system. In most cases, casual players will only ever perform parries by accident or by intentionally spamming out attacks. With frequent, numerous active attack frames on certain characters that lets them brute force getting a parry. And before anyone says to just
I know they freeze time, but like, it does still make it a slog. Like, to be fair, after a while, you know, when you realize just, like, how much time you're wasting looking at those animations, you're not losing your timer, but you're losing your real time. Here's the thing, though. You don't freeze your real-world time. You're just freezing the game timer. The time's still there. Something is still happening. Right? Either way, you're still stuck there sitting and waiting for it. Whether you like it or not.
Memorize one character's parry timings and just swap to them when needed. Let me play the clip.
So it is inaccessible.
So you have 4 characters in your team. You press the number 1 on your keyboard and switch to a character that can climb it. Oh god.
And so now I have to
So
memorize the precise geography,
Bruh, that's 2 buttons, man.
the precise fucking geological structure of the rocks to memorize and keep in mind which angle I am able to approach from based off the character model type. Is that
That's-
not?
Yeah? Oh boy, trying to climb something in a boss fight or whatever. God forbid a game makes you do that. To be honest, at some point, it's like, let's be real. How many of you guys are actually looking at the game and just trying to get a bunch of numbers out? Let's be real. At some point, like, what's the difference? You know, what's the difference? But yeah, like, after a certain amount of times, you just get tired and annoyed.
Not
That's
just a
a couple
complete
different ways of
pain
doing
in
it.
the ass that doesn't really need to be there. It's now like
I didn't say there was a
it's a
great
memory
mechanic
check
that was
of
like the best thing ever.
It's like a memory check of like how can like
Yeah,
can
they
I
still
remember
lets you
what,
turn 'em off.
what angle the rock looks like from like the approach. That's just
But the thing is, what does annoy me though with Wuwa is how much it likes to break the fucking camera whenever anything happens, especially when you use alts and everything. It likes to fuck with your camera, and it annoyed the fuck out of me when I did try to play it. It would constantly annoy me with its awful camera, and you couldn't turn off any of those weird camera effects. It was just super annoying. Like, yeah, Toph has it too, with the camera stuff in there, but I turn them off. Right? Stonebreak lets you skip them, and lets you turn them off too. Right, so you can just not deal with it if you don't like it. But Wuwa didn't let me do that. I don't know if they changed it now, but like, a lot of the effects and the camera stuff in there, I would turn off, like, immediately if I could. Right? NTE, when I played it, I didn't even get annoyed with it, because I already turned it off in the settings before I even started playing, because they let me turn it off from the start. You know what? That would make it easier, actually. Everyone jump cancels it anyways. If you play the Frost stuff properly, you jump cancel Grey Fox every time. You only want Grey Fox's discharge because when you activate it, you get 12 stacks of her time thing. But you don't want to do the animation. So you always cancel it. Toph is just a funny mess where you just end up canceling almost everything. Unless they have some really strong utility on it, or have an insane amount of damage behind it, you will cancel it for a discharge in Toph. They need to have a strong enough effect for like utility or something else to make you not want to cancel it. Because, yeah. Encoder glitching and now it's fine. I hope. Alright.
That's just a chore.
This is your reminder that there are more unique attack timings for units in Wuthering Waves for you to learn than there is player models in Genshin Impact for you to learn how to climb a pillar. I could go on about Wuwa's lackluster sound design for a large number of characters,
Okay.
the gradually increasing visual clutter across newer units and teams, the
Yeah.
shallow attribute system, or just how little echoes actually contribute to combat in a meaningful and engaging way beyond
Yeah,
the
but
throwaway
like in
button
practice
press.
you just
But I
dump
think I've
cancel it
made my
anyways.
point. There's a lot of problems with Wuthering Waves' combat system that drags it through the mud and prevents me and many from enjoying the game's combat, and by extension, its endgame content, which puts said combat under a microscope. So without any more delay, let's take a look at the endgame modes and what went wrong with them. As with any modern gacha nowadays, you've got your boilerplate endgame mode to kick things off with Wuwa's Tower of
So you're on
Adversity.
YouTube Premium?
The only thing
Okay.
of note for the TOA, when compared to the other gacha games, is the 3 towers and the Vigor system, an artificial resource that limits how many times you can use a single character across all 3 towers. This is meant to add a layer of decision making to whom you use to ascend floors with. The side towers are easier than the middle tower,
Yeah,
with
having
4
options
floors
are
that
nice.
ramp up in vigor cost by 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the middle tower being the hardest of the 3, with 2 floors that both have a vigor cost of 5. In most cases, this leaves players with 2 options: use 3 well-built teams to separately ascend all 3 floors, or use 2 well-built teams to fight the final floor of a single side tower, followed by one of the
Okay.
2 floors of the middle tower, with weaker teams clearing floors 1 through 3 of the side towers. Other than that, there's not much else to say about this mode. It's your garden variety Spiral Abyss clone that seemingly every one of these modern gacha games implement for endgame
Yeah.
players. You either enjoy it as an opportunity to put your teams through the ringer, or you roll your eyes and slog through it before the next reset for your rewards. The
Or
only
just
thing I
ignore
can
it
really criticize
entirely.
about this mode is that there's no ability to auto-clear floors 1 and 2 of the side tower if you clear floor 3 and calculate vigor cost accordingly. In a majority of cases, if you are employing the strategy of clearing floors 1 through 3 with a weaker team to save vigor on your stronger teams, and you don't have
I don't think they are. He said there's no skip button.
lopsided investment to make it on an account review video,
Uh-huh.
then there's no reason for you to slog through the first 2 floors if you can clear the third.
If it comes to it, doesn't matter, man. To me personally, it ain't worth it. I mean, by God, is just whatever. Just skip as much as you want. They don't really care.
That's all I got to say about this paint by numbers mode, so let's move on.
Okay.
Next up, we've got the tactical holograms. Just about the most
Yeah,
overglazed
let's break
thing
mini
I've
here.
seen in the WoWa community when it comes to endgame content. A boss fight mode with 6 tiers of difficulty and a set of modifiers in the latter half meant to test your ability to perform with almost, if not completely, perfect execution of your enemy knowledge and team
Okay.
comp rotations. Let's get something straight right now. If I already laid out why I think Wuthering Waves' combat is bad at the top of this video, what makes you think I want to play it with a near 0 margin of error for 20 asterite and a vice grip shaped scar on my post-mortem nutsack? Between Wuwa's visual clutter, awkward parry system, and strict adherence to team rotations because of the concerto system, why would I want to bother for an eighth of a pole? And I am confident in saying that a majority of the casual audience likely think the same way as me in this
Yeah.
regard. So for
Same
all
time,
intents
too.
and purposes, the tactical holograms
Same time too, right? If I wanted to play a game where I go around doing the dodging and doing all these perfect stuff in there, why don't I just play a better game for that? Like if I wanted to, I could go play a freaking Souls-like game if I really wanted to. I could go play Stellar Blade or something if I needed an anime theme there. I could play fucking East 10 on the hardest difficulty and try to do a no-hit run and again doing the freaking things there. Those games have dedicated guard and parry buttons that'll give you a way better experience on that too. You know? Like that's the thing, man. Why don't I just go play a better game for that? Especially when I won't have to go through hundreds, if not thousands of hours of bullshit to go and upgrade my character and farm equipment for them so that I can then do this 5 minutes of content. Right? Like, the other thing too, right, is just like, because of how throttled you are on being able to level up, upgrade your character skills and everything else, right? Like, you're severely throttled and everything. It's like, why don't I go and do Like, I could spend that time and play those other games instead to do a better version of whatever this bullshit is. Right? And I can do them on my own time on whatever setting I want. And I won't have to worry about freaking making sure I spend my freaking wave plates or whatever when it comes up, so I don't overcap, so I can get the most per time of whatever materials I need to upgrade the characters level, ascend them, their skills, their weapons levels, and everything else other than that. And like, of course, the gearing part and farming the freaking echoes with the tuners and all the other shit. And the EXP materials that you need, which are of course locked and gated behind doing those tacit field things, which cost stamina or wave plates, which are also time gated. Right? And then when you realize just like how much time spent there, I'm pretty sure like if you were like a fresh new player or whatever, getting to be able to even play through one of these hologram bosses would take a complete beginner, in terms of time, significantly more time than it would take them to like play through all of Elden Ring casually on like the first run through. It would take them less time to play through all of Elden Ring than to build up and get all the stuff that they need to go and actually do the hologram mode. Because of all that artificial shit that's put in their way. And they'll have a way better time playing that instead. Too, like playing the Elden Ring instead or whatever. You can like extend this to any other Souls-like game or whatever if this is really what you wanted. But yeah. Like, why don't I just go do that instead? And like, that's the thing for me, right? It's like, I could just go do that stuff instead.
Is something I will never touch. If you ask me, the Virtual Crisis limited time event that occasionally comes back every now and then is a much more interesting and nuanced interpretation of a boss fight mode with a wider variety of modifiers and reward incentives to aim for, all while having a greater margin of error for even my sorry ass to get a 120 rating without making me want to tear my hair out. I don't want to hear anything about Zenless Zone Zero players being sweaty when a mode like this exists in Wuthering Waves. And if your argument is that it's okay because you can do it at any time, then sure, yeah, I can see that. Kind of like how I, at any time, can walk out my front door and start digging up the dirt in the ground and shoving it down my mouth. But you don't see me doing that ever. Do you?
Yep.
I can't imagine just how frustrated the casual WoMA community would be if tactical holograms had reset cycles, as I'm confident that an overwhelming number of players would rather not see a helping of
69 is the best
Astrite go
score,
up
yeah.
in flames because they don't have enough screws loose to want to get one shot 20 times every few weeks. Lastly, we have Whimpering Wastes. And let's be honest here, WiiWa has not had a positive reputation for many since its initial release. From its abysmal token system, to its enemy behavior breaking formations, straggler enemies making you waste time, or ultimates to wipe up, clear advantages to units with AoE and grouping skills.
I mean, like, that's the other thing too with this mode. It's like, if I wanted to play a Warriors game clone, there are way better Warriors game clones I could play. And if I wanted to have, let's say, waifus in them or whatever, there are tons with anime IPs in them that you could play as well. And you'll have a way better time playing those over these. Over the shit here in there too.
And now, some egregious
For like the WiiWa mode. Because I'm assuming you're just getting a bunch of just trash mobs coming after you over and over. And the thing is, at least with the Warriors clones, you'll at least have maps and stuff like that where you're actually moving around. Your attacks and stuff in those games, they're independent from movement, so you have a lot of momentum to go around and go and attack all the hordes of enemies and stuff like that with while you're moving. And you're not just standing in the freaking stupid circle with a timer in those. Yeah, some of those will have missions with timers, sure. In those like Warriors games clones. Right, they're like the Dynasty Warrior clones or whatever. Because there's so many of them. I'm pretty sure I have at least like 10 of them in my Steam library that are just Dynasty Warrior clones with like anime IPs. Right? A time attack dungeon? Yeah, that could be interesting, but they don't have these in these games. Right? Like, the thing is, at least with those, it's more like you have like an actual dungeon and shit. Even if it's not really a dungeon, like you'll have like large open maps in a lot of these Dynasty Warriors clones where you're doing basically the same shit you're doing in Wiwa. Except unlike Wiwa, you're playing a game that was built for and around it in those games. And you'll have a way better time. Like, again, like, for example, like, you could go play stuff like, what? You could go play the fucking, how many freaking Neptunia, asset flips in, like, the Warrior-style clones do they have? I know they had the one with the zombies one, they had, like, the other one with, like, that tried to pretend to be an MMO, but not, right? I think they had, like, another one as well, not too long ago. They had like a bunch of those. I think they had one with like shooting mechanics, for example, and that's just under that one IP. There's freaking Zelda Dynasty Warrior clones, right? Hyrule Warriors. There's a couple of those. There's one for Fire Emblem as well. There's one where like you have a bunch of just freaking waifus that are dressed very questionably in things like that, and they have some other stuff in there. I remember that. There was like a Vita game on that. Let's see, what else do I remember that would have it? Right, I mentioned the Persona 5 Strikers already, right? What else do I know of that I have in there? There's like, well, the freaking Senran and Kagura games, the 3D ones, right? Like, those ones were all basically Dynasty Warrior clones. Except with the Senran and Kagura stuff, again, if you wanted your waifus, and you have more stuff there, more gameplay options and stuff like that there, you can go play something like that. Those are like some of them that I remember. Like, how many Senran and Kagura games do they have there? Right? They have like, there's at least 6 of those. Right? Because I don't know what the hell happened to 7. Because there was supposed to be a 7, and then I remember something, PlayStation, Sony, censorship so bad, the producer behind those games basically rage quit and gave up. I remember like reading an article on that a couple years back. That was something else, but like there's a lot more than those. Those are just some examples. I'm pretty sure some of the Sword Art Online anime game flips that they have again are like that. Some of those licensed games are like that. There's probably, I think there's like one with like Fairy Tail, there's one with One Piece, there's an Attack on Titan one. There's like so many others. I think there's like a Demon Slayer one as well. There's like so many of them. You can just like browse through like Steam. You filter by anime and action game, and you'll find a decent amount, like a pretty big amount of them. There's a lot of them. And like that's just like limiting ourselves to freaking anime aesthetics there. If we go broaden the spectrum further, there's so many other things out there that are basically the same type or genre of game. Right? Like, they're effectively just like how you have like things that are like, people call like, games that are like Dark Souls or whatever, Souls-like. Those games are freaking Dynasty Warrior clones. Effectively. Same kind of thing. And there's so many of them. Like, it's like really not hard to find them. But yeah.
P-inflation, Whimpering Waste for many, was a mode that was dead on arrival, and any attempts to salvage it has been the equivalent of polishing a turd. I don't know how you can take the simple concept of giving players a power fantasy by facing—
So like, here's the thing. If you have issues with WoWa, you are going to have issues with Genshin. A lot of the issues that are in WoWa are also in Genshin. So basically, the reality is, if you don't like WoWa, highly unlikely that you will like Genshin as well. And it's the same thing, you don't like Genshin, if you actually don't like Genshin, very, very likely that you probably won't like WoWa either. Because outside of a couple adjustments here and there, to an extent, they're effectively the same game. Like, that's just the reality. They're the same thing. Right? Like, endgame mode or not, they're basically the same thing. Right? Like, every single thing you do in WoW, you do in Genshin. Yeah, I mean, they're probably gonna do that anyways. It is what it is, man. Honestly, not really. If I had to pick, and only what I would want to play, I would actually say if all I was playing is just the initial start of Genshin and then I uninstalled the game, I'm definitely picking Genshin over WoA if I'm only going to play what I liked from them. Because at least Genshin had the early Mondstadt stuff. 1.0 Genshin, before you go to Leeway, was the best thing Genshin ever was. And WoA isn't even close to that. And the only reason why was because that early spot in Genshin, before you got to do basically any of the other crap, before any of the bullshit and any of the problems got in your way, it felt the closest to being a Zelda ripoff without quite getting there. I'm not even talking about COVID buff or anything. I'm just talking about content-wise on how the initial early portions of Genshin was structured. The initial early parts. I'm not talking about everything after the fact. Because here's the thing. After the fact, I don't want to deal with any of that bullshit, regardless of where it is. And WoA had all that stuff embraced in from the very start, and made sure to put it in your face and in your way the entire time, even from the very start. And it also provided nothing that I would want, or nothing I would want to deal with at the same time. Like, I don't care that you have freaking wall running in the game when there's like no fucking level design or anything interesting built around it, and I'm just using it to run in a straight line from point A to point B constantly. And then like I'm only doing that because there's some random ass dog shit chest with like 132 of a gotcha pull waiting for me there, and I repeat the thing over and over again. Like, I don't care about that shit, man. That's not gonna change anything. Like, I play freaking Infinity Nikki from time to time. I don't even do a lot of the exploration crap or whatever. I don't do it. Like, I'll log in and claim my stuff for the daily stuff in like 2 minutes, log off, and that's it. Unless I'm actually gonna play through something. Then I'll be there for longer. Like, when I touch that thing, I don't even pay attention to all the other shit in there. Like, I haven't for a long time. A very, very long time. Like, the last time I paid attention to a lot of those things was like last year. That's how long. But yeah. But like, that's me personally, right? But like, here's the thing though. The things that Genshin does to make me mad, any of these games will make me mad for doing the same. It's not a Genshin exclusive problem. But rather a lot of the things that they just all keep doing for some reason. But yeah. Oh, it does have a better implementation, especially when you don't even have to pay attention to it. If you don't want to. But yeah, like, I don't really like farming in general in a lot of these games. I don't. The most farming I've ever really done in a game, though, was back when I played WoW, and it wasn't for anything to progress my account, and it was more so because I wanted to get some nice horse to ride on, or like a dragon to ride on, or some other mount, or whatever. It was more so because I just wanted, or to get some pet. You know, maybe I wanted to get that secret polar bear thing mount to ride around on behind some faction doing some really obscure thing or something. Or maybe I wanted to have like my pet squire from the Argent tournament ground also have like a little pony for him to ride around in, so he can also go and fetch mail for me or whatever. I would go to lengths to get stuff there and do things there when I played WoW. But a lot of it was more so for fun stuff or like cosmetics I liked rather than anything else. But like, those were things I did by choice and not because I had to. Yeah, no, when I played Genshin, I didn't do that, man. Because, like, I only did what was I only did what was needed. And anything further than that, I was like, fuck no, I'm not doing this shit. Because it's not worth it. It never was. Right, I only did the minimum amount that I was needed. And, like, to get certain things, like, sure, like, back then I would get the Oculi, just so I could get the constellations for the main character or whatever. And if I randomly saw a chest or something in front of me, sure, I would go take it. But I wouldn't go out of my way to go 100% everything. And because what you get out of it is just dog shit. Especially for what they ask out of it. And one of the things that annoyed me, though, was picking minced for the stuff in there. But again, that's not also a Genshin exclusive problem. WoW has the exact same problem. Sure, characters in WoW need less mints total, but they still need it. Same time, here's the thing. If we're going to adjust, let's say, material farming for characters in Genshin and WoW, well, Genshin locks skill books for the characters behind certain days of the week. The total amount you need and the amount you get per resin, when you adjust it for relative value and compare it to wave plates, you effectively need about half of what you would need to go fully upgrade a character in WoW versus Genshin. You need like half the amount in Genshin. But it feels worse because you're stuck on which days of the week you can go farm the materials, but the overall amount you need is significantly lower. You also get more relative resin per day that you can use to go get more stuff than WoW gives you wave plates for the same type of thing. Either way, both systems are absolutely terrible, and I hate the freaking chore of like just going in there, repeat farming the same thing over and over and over again. Let's be real, I don't like it wherever it is, and I would rather just sweep through it or skip it entirely if I could. But yeah, like that's how I look at it, man. I'm not just looking at when you do it, but the amount you have to do as well. And the WoW side, it looks better on the surface, but deep down it's a lot worse in a lot of those systems. The same thing with artifacts versus echoes. Genshin artifacts, they have a hard rule where the main stats and substats cannot be the same on any single piece. There are also different rules on like the amount of substats you can have in the ranges on there. You only have a range of 4 values per substat in Genshin. WoW has a range of 8. You have 4 substats per piece in Genshin versus WoW having 5, right? You can at least see the substats you have in Genshin as well ahead of time. Same time, again, there are less main stats in Genshin, even on the worst slot being the Goblet slot, than WoW has per substat slot in Echoes. So, like, the thing is, like, if you wanted a fully min-maxed, let's say, Feather or Flower slot, in Genshin, that's about 1 in 8,000 odds if you wanted it to be, like, the maximum possible roll in, like, a crit stat, for example, while also having all of the exact subsets you want. And this is even including the factor of getting the domain to drop the item. Keep in mind, just looking at the subsets alone in WoW, ignoring getting the Echo to drop chance, and what slot it is or whatever the cost in that factor in, and which set it's on, right? That's already, because of the amount of substats and the ranges for them, that's already 1 in 300 million odds. Like, it's significantly better odds in Genshin. Albeit, they're still absolutely terrible. They're terrible. Sure. Here's the thing though. You have to factor in the stamina required to level them up too. So what? You can go farm as many main stats as you want in WoWa. But you need the tuners, you need the experience, and where'd you get those? Those are stamina locked. So what's the difference? You're still gated before you can even look at anything important with them. But the thing is, the actual RNG part, when you start to get to the part where after you get the item and start upgrading it, is drastically worse in Wuthering Waves. When you look at it from probability-wise, you look at it from game 3 and probability, it is drastically worse in Wuthering Waves. The worst that you have in Genshin is getting the fucking goblet to drop. But at least it's just getting the fucking thing to drop. And you're not dealing with that thing 5 times over per piece. Per character. Yeah, and you can get that stuff in Genshin by other means too. So what? You can get some of that stuff by other means. You have the fucking thing to convert one piece into something else in Genshin. You have that selector thingy that they have too. You have as well other sources like those unction items that you can get from events and from your teapot to level up your freaking artifacts in Genshin too. Oh boy, you can do that stuff too. Wow. Oh yeah, the world bosses in Genshin also drop stuff too. You know, those also exist. Oh boy. But the thing is, you also don't get enough either way in either system. You're always going to be bottlenecked. It doesn't matter. You will never have enough. And the thing is, again, like, you can recycle whatever you upgraded in Genshin, or, I don't know, I think you can do it in WoW as well, to at least get the experience materials back. But you don't have the tuner layer to deal with in Genshin. My point is, they're both really awful, but, well, WoW will look nicer on the surface. It only looks nicer on the surface when deep down, it's honestly worse. Well, that's good for you, man. That's good for you. You can have 6,000 tuners, I don't care. But again, like, how about the experience materials? And stuff like that. I remember that being a very big problem. I don't think people playing Genshin at this point are really complaining about having the experience materials to go and level up their artifacts if they've been playing it regularly as well. Because I remember when I played Genshin, after a certain point, I was just only looking for artifacts for them to drop with the stats I wanted. And that's it. I didn't care about experience materials because my inventory is packed full of those. But yeah. The point is, though, I still have to deal with the RNG bullshit and stuff like that. And the thing is, I would rather take 1 in 8,000 odds than 1 in 300 million odds. I don't care if I have infinite chances at the slot machine, because you also have to consider the time you spend even rolling that quote-unquote slot machine. Let's say it takes you like 5 minutes to go and sort through and go and upgrade each and every single one of your Echo one time. Like, to upgrade one Echo one time. Let's say it takes you 5 minutes. And 5 minutes to do it in Genshin. Point is, right? 1 in 8,000 odds versus 1 in 300 million odds. The amount of time spent, even if you had unlimited chances, to compare to the 1 in 8,000, you would be spending literally days of your life rolling to get the same odds as rolling in Genshin. You would have to be spending days of your life for the same amount of odds if you had infinite of every resource. You would be spending literal days of sitting through there and doing it over and over and over again. Even if you had unlimited slots at the chances of the slot machine. The other thing too, with infinite farming and this stuff in this game too, I used to play World of Warcraft like crazy back in the day. I quit during Legion. Why do you think I quit during Legion? What did they change between World of Warcraft before Legion and World of Warcraft from Legion onwards? How did they shift the game and what did they do? Because the way I would play World of Warcraft in the past, completely unplayable with how they shifted and designed things from Legion onwards and the direction they took it. And here's the thing, the stuff they had there is drastically better than the bullshit you have in rolling gear in Genshin and UA. With the Titan Forging gear between World Drop Legendaries, Titan Forging gear, and Artifact Power farming, all of those are significantly more tolerable to me than the fucking bullshit they have in Genshin gearing, much less WoW's gearing, which is drastically worse. And here's the thing with Artifact Power and World Drop Legendaries and all of that stuff in WoW. You could farm any content that can drop gear, even trash mobs. They have a chance of dropping Artifact Power. They have a chance of dropping gear that can Titan Forge all the way up to the highest possible gear drop from Mythic Raids, if you were lucky. They also have RNG chance to drop a legendary piece of gear that could be one of your best in slot pieces. And they would replicate this for each and every one of your gear slots. Okay? But at least, with the thing there, every single drop still had a fixed stat budget relative to whatever level they dropped at. And they had the same types of stats on them regardless, even if the ranges and budgets between them were higher or lower, depending on if the piece Titan Forged or not. And how far it Titan Forged. Right? So, like, it got rid of the whole rolling aspect and just went in for just the range and if the item dropped. And that was still far too bullshitty and too much for me, that I got burnt out really quick. Because one of the things I like to do was play multiple classes to go and do different things, and sometimes play multiple specs within each class. Like, if I wanted to play my paladin, maybe one day I wanted to go play healer in a dungeon, but maybe, like, in a raid I wanted to play retribution and be a DPS. Or I play my shaman, maybe I want to do the same, except maybe DPS in the dungeon and go heal in a raid or whatever. And mix and match depending on the spec for whichever thing. Whatever I preferred playing that expansion. And I would hop between characters constantly and play whatever I wanted. Except when they added all that stuff in there, it basically made it impossible because even within the same class, I couldn't even switch specs. Because I had to deal with the same thing all over again for each spec. But yeah. Like, the game basically became unplayable and I wasn't basically playing the game at that point. And like, the thing is, as bad as that is, these gacha games are orders of magnitude worse at that aspect. But also giving nothing to make it tolerable for me, or just having no benefit from it. Instead, it's just there as a player retention system to keep you there as long as possible, while also stopping you from doing anything in the game. And it just gets in the way. Right? Like, to me, these systems, they have to be something, like, there's something I tolerate, not something I like or want to deal with or whatever. The fact that I have to use the word tolerate, it should say a lot. Right? My choice of words on it is tolerate. Right? It's not anything else. The word is tolerate. And what if I don't want to tolerate it? And the thing is, if I'm going to compare it on how much I want to tolerate them, or how willing I am, I'm going to be honest, Genshin is more tolerable to me. Especially when I know all the probability and the game theory behind the RNG stuff on everything involved, Genshin is significantly more tolerable. Again, 1 in 8,000 odds versus like 1 in 300 million. What will you pick? Right? Like, what do you pick? I know what I'm picking. If I really had to tolerate. 1 in 8,000 sounds a lot better than 1 in 300 million. Like, I don't care how many slots of the chances of the slot machine, man. I would literally need thousands of slots, like thousands of chances, just to match the 1 in 8,000. And you're realistically not gonna get that many. And that's why you have over 6,000 tuners, because of just how awful it is. It is really that awful. Like, you think about it, how awful is it? Like, Genshin isn't even that awful. It's still awful, though. So, like, when people are trying to say WoWa better, I hard disagree. Unless you're talking purely in terms of graphics, then sure. But graphics is all it has. That's all it has. And here's the thing, too. What the fuck I need the stats for if I'm not even gonna do any of the other shit in there? What the fuck would I need that stuff for if I'm not even gonna touch all that stuff? So then, like, if I'm already in that point, perspective and standpoint, why do I even need to bother at all? And why would being able to infinitely farm one thing, even if the probability wasn't that awful, matter to me? Right? Like, why would it matter to me? And the reality is, and the answer is, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't matter to you. Like, it won't matter to someone that isn't gonna bother to give a fuck or touch any of those, like, endgame contents. Heck, it won't matter as well if they're gonna go in and set the world level to as low as they possibly can. And play on the lowest world level if all they want to do is go through the story, if they even wanted to do that. But I can't even be bothered to do that. Right, like, why would that matter to them at that point? If they're just gonna ignore all of that other stuff. And then suddenly what looks like an advantage on the surface in WoWa suddenly doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter anymore.
Off against hordes of enemies and managed to screw it up so spectacularly as Kuro Games have done continually with Whimpering Wastes. Yet they've somehow done it, and it remains to be seen as a forever black mark on the content offerings of Wuthering Waves, one that players must regularly contend with as it's a primary source.
Again. Okay. How about this? What if I don't even want to do that? Okay, you're coming from someone who doesn't even give a fuck about exploring. Especially when the only thing you get from exploring is bullshit amounts of premium currency. That aren't even worth the time you put in there. When I'm looking at it from that perspective, that doesn't even matter anymore. I'm just not gonna do it at all. If I'm not gonna do it at all, it doesn't even matter. At the same time though, like the crafting condensed resin for double rewards or whatever, yeah, I get that. But why would I need to craft it if I'm not even gonna touch the content that would need me to upgrade the characters anyway? To an extent, sure. But if I'm only gonna do the bare minimum, it doesn't even matter, because these games will pretty much guide you toward where you need to go. And they'll give you teleporters to every single spot anyways. So it's not really that much of a factor. Right? Oh boy, I can cut down gliding in a straight line in WoWa. I can cut down the gliding in a straight line in WoWa, so now I'm only spending 2 minutes doing that instead of running there in 3-4 minutes. Oh boy. Oh gee, man, I'm just moving in a straight line from point A to point B. Like, honestly, like with both of these, I'm extremely bored and I don't give a fuck, man. Here's the reality for me. You want to improve my experience in those games? Just delete the open world entirely so I don't have to do that. Because the freaking worlds are completely lacking and devoid of any type of world or level design in them. And they're just basically just that. And Wu was even worse, where basically everything is basically a flat terrain. Right? Like, basically everything is effectively a flat surface. And you're just moving from point A to point B in the fastest straight line you possibly can. At that point, why even have that thing in the first place? Just let me skip to that next part. You know? Like, that is basically how far gone it is and like where I'm at. Where I don't even want to do that anymore, man. I don't even want to do that shit. It doesn't matter where. Right? And if I'm bored the entire time while doing it, even worse. So, like, yeah, that's part of why, like, I don't really care. I don't care if you make a game where different characters have different movement tools and will have different ways to go through things. I don't know about you, but, like, how many of you guys have ever played, let's say, Sonic 3 and Knuckles? Or Sonic 3? Fun fact, every single level, while the maps are all the same in that game, they play entirely different whether you play as Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles. Because Sonic has the highest jump height. He cannot fly, he cannot glide, he moves the fastest, and because of physics, you can launch yourself and fling yourself to certain areas that you can't reach as other characters. Tails can fly, he moves a bit slower, but you can reach very high vertical spots that are very steep pretty easily and get to certain ledges, especially on floating islands or whatever, or floating platforms, because Tails can fly. Knuckles, he has a very, very low jump height. He can glide. And he can climb. But, like, they use the same stages for each of them, but you play through the stages, the actual gameplay will be entirely different depending on the character you use. Because, sure, they're going from point A to point B, but each one of those characters are doing it in a different way. Sure, Sonic will be the fastest to get to point B, but there are a lot of areas that you can only access as Tails, or a lot of areas you can only access as Knuckles. Oh yeah, Knuckles also can just punch through certain barricades and stuff, and access those areas that Tails and Sonic cannot get through. I almost forgot about that part too. But yeah. Yeah, Knuckles can also explore areas that Sonic and Tails cannot. I mean, that applies to each of those characters. Sonic can reach areas that Tails and Knuckles can't. Tails can reach areas that Knuckles and Sonic cannot either, as well. Though, the thing with Tails is more of, like, just extra power-ups and stuff like that. But yeah. With like, Knuckles, there's, like, a huge difference in the entire gameplay between each stage compared to playing as Sonic. There's a massive difference. Despite the maps being literally the same. Except for Sky Sanctuary. Where Sky Sanctuary just has the Mecha Sonic fight for Knuckles. But yeah. Like, that's the thing there. I did most of them, but like, that was mostly because I was filling time while streaming in the category for drops. But yeah, like, I didn't go like completely out of my way to go do everything though. I don't have it finished. I got most of them though. Yeah, I'm talking about like a normal playthrough. I'm not talking about like unintended glitches. Right? I mean, the thing is, like, this applies further in other games as well where they have multiple characters with the same stages, right? Like Sonic Adventure, same deal. Same thing with Sonic 06. Right, you have multiple characters, same stages, but each character goes through them differently. Even Sonic Frontiers with the Final Horizon update, where you had that last island, but you could play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. The playthrough for each character of that map there, entirely different. They had entirely different gameplay and ways to go about it. There are areas that only Knuckles could get through, areas only Sonic could get through, areas that only Tails could get through, and areas only Amy could get through. They did have indicators and color coding on certain things to tell you if it was yellow, it was probably for Tails, red for Knuckles, and pink for Amy. For certain things, but yeah. Right, because like each of them had like different mechanics as well. Like again, Tails can fly, Knuckles can glide and climb. Amy had her weird slow fall jump thingy and a double jump thing that was a bit different, but yeah. From what I remember. Again, like they all had different ways of doing things and different gameplay for them. But yeah, hi there Gamers University, welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Of premium currency. To wrap this up with a nice little bow, the endgame content of Wuthering Waves has failed to present players with a meaningful experience to its wider audience without coming up short or outright failing its execution. Tower of Adversity is an ancient relic of Kuro's days of living under the shadow of Genshin Impact. Tactical holograms are an overhyped content creator magnet that offers too little in exchange for too much frustration. And whimpering wastes should have never left the cutting room floor. For how much the WUBA community brags about having little to no HP inflation, they sure don't seem to care if their endgame content is even fun to play to begin with, so long as they can point out a line going up and shout from the mountaintops, Hoyo bad. Except that's not even true anymore for WUBA. Womp womp! And with that, I have said all I really wanted to about Wuthering Waves' endgame content and why it's holding this game back. So long as I'm a content creator that resides within the ZCC community, I doubt my opinions will ever be taken seriously. But that's okay. At the end of the day, whatever happens to Wuthering Waves will have no effect on me, and I can continue to play the actual game that has my full attention. And seeing as how ZCC already took some of the best aspects.
Yeah, I know it's closer, but that mode was dog shit too, man. I used to play PGR. I used to. But I haven't touched it in a year. I wonder why. There's so many problems that built up that I'm like, yeah, I'm done. But yeah. Wait, Weevil is actually the Spiral Abyss clone? That's why I hate it? I mean, TOA is also an Abyss clone. Just with weird entry restrictions. But Weevil is also like, just AoE fast. TOA is the Abyss clone. I hate it for that. And then Weevil is just... What, you're just fighting waves and waves of trash mobs? In a timer or whatever, as quickly as possible? Trying to kill as many as you can or something? That's my assumption there. But like, that's just like, why don't I just go play a game built around that instead? Because WoW is definitely not built for around it. Especially, why not play one where I'm not freaking confined to a stupid circle with a timer?
Of WoWa's roguelite mode, while they at the same time sunsetted their own in favor of an objective downgrade, I'm all for the supposed third wheel of Hoyoverse games to continue to improve and refine their game, while the darling child of Kuro proceeds to watch on as we do so. But until then, this has been R.A. Kato Zodan, and I'm clocking out.